Hello and welcome to this presentation on interactive lessons that teach digital literacy. We're really going to spend some time defining digital literacy, taking a look at how students feel about being on the internet and social media, and then we're going to dive into some types of lessons that I've done with students. My name is Laura Guion, and I'm the coordinator for model schools at Washington, Saratoga, Warren, Hamilton, and Essex BOCES, which is located in Gansevoort, New York. And really what I'm going to do is take you through lessons and activities that I've done with students, both as when I was a sixth grade ELA teacher, as an integration specialist, and then in my current role. So let's first define digital literacy. When you look at digital citizenship, I like to think of it in terms of a bicycle. When you first learn to ride a bike, you kind of know the basics of riding that bike. You know, you put your foot on the pedals, you hold on to the handlebars, you're learning the basics. That's digital citizenship. You're learning what it means to be a good digital citizen, how to be kind online, how to navigate the internet, how to look at different news outlets to determine whether or not they're true or whether they're not. And then once you're kind of getting comfortable with that, you can shift to that digital literacy. That's where you can kind of ride the bike by yourself, right? You can ride pretty well. You know the rules of riding. You know which side of the road you should be on. When you're thinking of it in terms of digital literacy, you know how you should act online. You know that not everything you read on the internet is true. And you're spending some time actually using digital tools. When you move to being fluent, that's really when you can ride that bike really well. You might be the one being the tour guide. You might take it to travel. You might use it as a communication tool where you're exploring and you're doing different things with other people. You're kind of the leader there. And when you think of it in terms of digital fluency online, it's where you really are developing and creating and communicating and collaborating. You're using social media and you're using the internet to do some really remarkable things. So let's take a look and see what happens on the internet in just 1 minute. And this great graphic was put together by the two people you see. You see their Twitter handles at the bottom of your screen. And when you take a look at this, you can really see that in 60 seconds, a lot is happening on the internet. If you look at the big three, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, you can see that it's happening very quickly within a minute, how many tweets and how many posts and how many text messages or how many videos are viewed. It's just an incredible number. But then you take a look at where our students are spending their time between Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. Twitch has really become a very popular social media site for our students, especially the gamers. And you see how many things are being done in just that minute. We know that this is where our children are spending their time. We have to think about how we want to harness this for good, right? To make sure that they're using it properly, that they're staying safe, and that they're really using it for some pretty remarkable in some pretty remarkable ways. And what we're going to do next is take a look at some of the students' feedback, because what we did is we took a look at this graphic and we asked students based on this information, how do you feel about social media? How do you spend time when you're using the internet? How do you use your Chromebook versus using your cell phone or your gaming computer versus your laptop? We asked these really open-ended questions and we gathered some really neat feedback from both middle schoolers and high schoolers. And here's some of the big takeaways that we got from that data. One student said, we're really not addicted to technology, and it actually helps us with problems and communications. So we think about those soft skills that as teachers, we really want our students to be using in the classroom, right? We want to foster those communication, those critical thinking, those problem solving, those collaboration skills, those being creative. All of those things our students are already doing online. They're craving them as well, but they're using social media. They're using these internet sites as a way to do that. In the center, one student was quite honest and said, there will always be another unblocked game site. So even though we tend to put filters in place for our students to keep them safe and to make sure that they're using their Chromebooks or their iPads, whatever you use in your school district, for good, they're always finding a way around the system, right? They know they love to play games. That games are where they find their joy. So they're always going to find a way around those filters, and they're pretty tech savvy that way. And then the final one says, we like to be able to talk to people and we like social media. So our students really are craving that communication. We always thought that having our phones in front of us took away that we always had this wall between them and the next person, but they look at it as a way to communicate. So even if they're in the same room with each other, they might be talking through Twitch or through Snapchat or through Instagram, but they're doing it in such a way that that is comfortable for them. One student says, we use technology for everything. We learn everything by watching YouTube videos. It's how we communicate. So we know YouTube is one of the big social media giants, right? We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have YouTube. And our students are spending their time on YouTube. So they're watching videos to learn. And that is something we have to think about as educators, is if that's how our students prefer to learn, are they mostly visual learners? Are they audio learners? What is it about watching a YouTube video that they really like? And how can we harness that in the classroom? So for example, I had one 5th grade student who wanted to learn to use the Rubik's Cube. So what he did is he watched YouTube videos to learn the algorithm. And he liked it because he could pause whenever he got to a step, do the step, rewind if he was confused, and then he can watch it over and over and over again until he memorized the algorithm that you need to solve the Rubik's Cube. I had another student when I taught 6th grade that said he wanted to learn to play the guitar, but his parents didn't want to pay for lessons because they thought it was a passing interest. So he went onto YouTube and he started watching how-to videos on how to play the guitar, and he taught himself to play. And he still plays now. It's something that has gone through him all through high school and on to college. He still enjoys to play the guitar. So our students are using technology. They're using the internet to learn, and they're also using it to communicate, to find out the information, to discern it, to navigate it, and then to learn some new skills. This is just a fact that came from a Google survey that 91% of our children in the US between the ages of 4 and 11 have access to a smart speaker or voice assistant. So when you're talking about Siri, you're talking about Alexa, or you're talking about Google, our students have access. So they're finding out information. They're connected to this World Wide Web in ways that we just never had when we were younger. All right, because most households have something that our children have access to get access to the internet, even as young as 4 years old. Young people also believe that social media helps teams become more civically minded and exposes them to greater diversity. When we did the survey, our students said they felt more in touch with what was happening in the world. They felt a better understanding and more empathy for other cultures because they could see what was happening. They could read about it. They could look at images from different parts of the world. Our young people really are craving that connection. They don't look at the globe as a large and diverse population that they never have access to. They look at it as a close-knit community that they can really learn from each other and really experience what it's like to be in different cultures. So it's a very different experience for them because they look at it as all connected and they feel like they're part of something great. The average amount of time our Americans under 8 years old are spending on mobile devices each day has tripled between 2013 and 2017. Our youngest kids are spending an incredible amount of time on social media. Several years ago, I went into a 3rd grade class and I asked the students to list any site that they use that they give information. So it might be a name, it could be an email, it could be a username, it could be a birth date, anything, whatever it was. And we filled the page with how many sites that they use on a daily basis of things that they log into and they spend time on. So we know that students, even as young as 8, need to understand what's okay. They need to become good quality digital citizens because at that point, they're already spending a ton of time on the internet, and we want to start those good habits young. We asked our students how they like to use their Chromebook. So this school that we asked the survey in happened to be a Chromebook one-to-one school. And this is what the students said. And the larger the word, the more students said it. These are the things that students like to use their Chromebook for. So for writing, for research, for studying, for creating. They mentioned some tools that they were using. They do their homework. They organize with it. These are all the things that students love to do. And I love that I see words like storytelling and collaborating and song making and researching and telling stories. All of these things are really important words that we want our students to be engaged in. So I know that in these classrooms, or on these computers, these students are doing some pretty incredible things, both on their Chromebooks, but using the internet for really important research and for different activities. So let's kind of dive in now to the lessons. So I wanted to share with you some of the lessons that I've done over the years. And the first one I'm going to share with you is a simple digital citizenship lesson that we did in 2nd grade. And this 2nd grade lesson, the idea was to define what it is to be a digital citizen, to explore resources. So we showed them a couple videos and we did a couple activities that let them explore different resources, so they kind of start to think about what they should be looking for when they're on social media or on the internet. And then we examined closely what it means to be a digital citizen. So we gave them actual stories, or we gave them actual resources, and they had to say, this is how you should act, this is what they did right, this is what we could do better. And then we had them actually put together something that described what a good digital citizen does. So they had to start to make those statements. And then we had them reflect on their experience. What did they learn? What were they still curious about? What did they think about based on that information that we shared with them? And then when we shifted to middle school, and we did that same type of activity from second grade all the way through to about fifth grade. And then when we hit sixth grade, we shifted the conversation a little bit. So at this point, we assume, and we went over again, defining digital citizenship, what it means to be, kind online. And then we explored resources of people or especially children that are using social media in really good ways. So we showed some pretty remarkable teens that are using social media as a platform to get their voice out, and they're using it in good ways. And we discussed ways that we could really use social media in good ways in our own community, and how we can use it to really leverage a positive change that we wanted. And that was through some really rich discussions. And then we talked about ways that they can be civically engaged, both online and off. And we talked at that point about how they can start to mold their digital footprint. We spent a lot of time on thinking about what we want to put out on social media and how we want to be portrayed. And we talked about this is how you feel now. Are you going to feel that same way in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? Because that information they put out when they're in middle school is still going to be there. And we've reflected on that. When we shifted to the high school level, at the high school, we really took, this was all right, now it's, feet on the ground. You should be a good digital citizen. This is what we need you to be doing. So what we did is the very first thing we had them do is Google themselves. And the reason we had them do that is we wanted them to see what's already out there. What have they already put out into the cyber world? Does it really align with who they were? Does it align with who they want to be? Is it the image that they want to portray? And I had this one student actually that when she Googled herself, she found one photo. That was it. So she didn't have much of a digital footprint, but it was a photo of her from the fifth grade. She was a ninth grader. And it was a photo of her from the fifth grade. And she looked at it and she was like, this isn't who I am anymore. It was just a silly photo. There wasn't anything inappropriate, but it was just really silly and goofy. And she's like, I don't want this to be what people see when they Google me. I'm going for my first job. I'm thinking about my future. I don't want this silly photo to be the first thing that people see. So we had that really rich conversation of how can she change what it looks like for her on social media? Or how does it look for her on the internet? How can she change that search to come up with images of her doing things that she normally does? And so we talked about it. And this student was very involved in sports. She was very busy with different clubs and organizations on campus. She was very involved with her church. So we talked about what she could be posting. So if she's at that soccer game cheering on her friends, post a picture, right? Throw that onto Instagram, or tweet something, or however she wanted to do it. She could put that information out there. If she was doing something with her church, to post a picture showing that she was doing that, and kind of change that narrative. Kind of flood the good so that bad kind of gets buried. So that one image of her in the fifth grade is the last thing that comes up, because all of these really positive things are coming up at the front. And we really talk about social media and digital footprints even more from there. Once we've kind of had that conversation, we talk about the types of social media they use. They list all of them to be able to talk about, this is what I like and what I don't like. These are the sites that I use. And that has changed over the years. It used to be that Instagram was the spot, and then it became Snapchat. Now Twitch has been very popular. YouTube has always kind of been floating in there. So that shifts over time, but what they're putting out and what they're posting and how they're posting really stays the same. And then we really talk through the definition of what it is to be a good digital citizen. And then we had the students actually create something that they use similes, and they said, my digital life is like and they created an image with it. And then what we did is we talked about ways to really create a strong digital footprint or digital tattoo, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that when they're thinking about that college or career or whatever they want to do after high school, that when a person Googles them, it's going to show them exactly how they are. It's going to show that positive image that they really wanted to show about themselves. So we really spent some time reflecting and planning. So we could have started this younger, but what I found was high school, that 9th grade, is when they start to flick that switch to, oh, I have to think about my future a little bit more. When you have those conversations in middle school, they don't quite get it yet. To some extent, some do, but I find in the middle school, it's more about setting those good practices in place, and high school really planning for the future. So here's just a couple of those examples of ones that students created based on what they came back with their similes. And I thought these were really great. One student said, my digital life is like a pet. The more you take care of it, the better off it will be. And then one student said, my digital life is like food because I can't live without it, right? So just giving the idea that they're thinking about how they're using it. We're not telling them not to. We're just telling them to think about how and what they post. So as far as some resources, where I get the information to make these lessons and what I'm sharing with students, I pull a lot of my information from Common Sense Education. I use the lessons that are already made from Common Sense in Nearpod, and then I kind of cull them with the things that I need based on the questions or the desire from the teacher of what I'm doing in the classroom. But I also use wonderful articles from Wonderopolis, from Newsella. Actually, if you even Google colleges that are using the internet search as part of their hiring process or part of their deciding whether or not they're going to accept students, there's tons of articles of students that lost scholarships because of things they posted, and tons of football coaches and such saying, I do look at social media to see if they're going to be a good fit for our team. So there's lots of really good things with a simple Google search to find that information. And I use a ton of YouTube videos because that's where students like to learn, right? They want to have that information. And if you want to embed questions, you can embed questions from a YouTube video on something like Edpuzzle or on Nearpod. I use Nearpod, but you can certainly do it from those sort of places. And that's where you're going to be able to gain that information. Another thing that I was able to do was with adults, I've done this, but I know that others have taken this concept and used it with students and run them within their school, is a DigCit Carnival. And what we did is we had stations around the big room that we were in, and it was self-driven. The participants had a sheet to fill out as they went through each to learn everything they could about digital citizenship, and digital literacy. And there were different stations, and you can see them on your screen, but they did an activity and they watched videos. They interacted through interactive activities online, and they had to fill out information online. And the idea was that this was self-driven. It was completely differentiated. They can go at their own pace. And the idea is that they're starting to gather that information in the way that students also gather information. They were watching YouTube videos. They were doing these different activities on these different websites. Turnkey this over to a student side, and you can have the students do the same thing. They could do it as a carnival where you're going around and you're doing these different fun activities, but they're sharing and they're gathering information and they're learning together. And then you come back as a whole and you break it apart. So just to kind of go through the sites a little bit, the Lucky Duck one, each letter of the word duck, when they picked up a duck, it had a letter on the back, and they were able to use that information to do whatever the activity. And that's kind of how each of them went as they went through. The kissing booth really was just stickers that looked like lips, and they did different activities with barcodes to scan or QR codes rather to scan as they were going through. I wanted to share all those resources with you. So I'm going to share this with you through a link so you have access to that elementary lesson, that middle school lesson, and the high school lesson, as well as all the resources on the Digital Citizenship Carnival. You are welcome to reach out to me at any point if you have any questions on any of these resources, and I'd be happy to share anything else with you. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please at any time reach out. I'm Lori Guion. Have a great day.